That's early.
Well done, Michael.
Right, as we have a quorum, we'll begin our meeting, and I wish to say good afternoon to everybody and welcome to our public meeting. We have apologies received from Eamon O'Keefe, Eamon O'Keefe sends his apologies. The first item on our agenda is the minutes of the meeting held on the 30th of November and the 14th of December 2023. They've already been approved at a private meeting, but we need to do it here at the public meeting. Is that agreed? I'd like to read some formal notices. I'd like to remind members of the constitutional requirements that members must be physically present within the confines of the place which Parliament has chosen to set, namely Leinster House, in order to participate in public meetings. I will not permit a member to participate where they are not adhering to the constitutional requirement. Therefore, any member who attempts to participate from outside the precincts will be asked to leave the meeting. Our next order of business is our engagement with representatives of the Western Rail Trail Campaign Group, public petition number P00030/23, create a walking and cycling greenway on the closed railway from Sligo to Athenry. Before we start, I wish to explain some limitations to parliamentary privilege and the practices of the House as regards reference you may make to other persons in your evidence. The evidence of witnesses physically present or who give evidence from within the parliamentary precincts is protected pursuant to both the Constitution and statute by absolute privilege. You are again reminded of the long-standing parliamentary practice that you should not criticise or make charges against any person or entity by name or in such a way as to make him, her or it identifiable, or otherwise engage in speech that might be regarded as damaging to the good name of the person or entity. Therefore, if your statements are potentially defamatory in relation to the identifiable person or entity, you will be directed to discontinue your remarks. It is imperative that you comply with any such direction. Before we hear from our witnesses, I propose we publish their opening statement on the committee's website. Is that agreed? On behalf of the committee, I'd like to extend a warm welcome to members of the Western Rail Trail Campaign and the campaign in Sligo, Mayo and Galway. Western Rail Trail Campaign, Mr Brendan Quinn, Mr John Mulligan. Sligo Greenway Co-op, Councillor Mary Cassidy, Sligo County Council. Kiltama East Mayo Greenway Campaign, Bernice Brennan, and Co Galway Quiet Man Greenway Campaign, Sean Kniff. And Michael May, East Mayo Greenway Campaign, who's in the public gallery. I suggest our witnesses should make their opening statement for around 10 minutes, and all the witnesses we have, when all the witnesses have made their opening statements, we will then have questions and comments from members. Each member will have around 10 minutes, and that should allow members to come back in on a second round of questions if need be. I now call on Mr Brendan Quinn to make his opening statement, and perhaps you would introduce your next colleague when you completed your statement.
Certainly.
Mr Quinn.
Thank you. Cancala, thank you and the committee for this opportunity to present our views to the Oireachtas. Can I have the next slide, please? When I started this petition, I had no idea how it would be received. And upwards of 27,000 people, and there's an astonishing number of people who have signed this petition, who in the main are from the west of Ireland or are west of Ireland diaspora, real people who have expressed a real opinion. Sligo, Mayo and Galway are the three counties the closed railway from Collooney, County Sligo to Athenry, County Galway runs through. And there are three stories to tell. As this effort is the combination of three separate campaigns, the Sligo Greenway Co-op, the East Mayo Greenway campaign, and from Galway, the Quiet Man Greenway campaign. Three people sitting alongside me will each give an overview on how they see the Greenway benefiting these counties. Councillor Marie Castley from Sligo, Bernice Brennan from Kiltimagh, County Mayo, and former Galway Councillor Sean Cunniff from Tuam. John Mulligan, who has supported this campaign consistently, is also here to give an overview for the committee on the arguments about railway, Greenway or both. We recognise there is another part of this debate, a view from some people that the closed railway may actually be reopened sometime in the future. And we hold a pragmatic view. What the state holds in this closed railway route is a continuous piece of land in public ownership. The Department of Transport has called it a transport corridor, Placing a greenway on a closed railway route is an international best practice option to protect a route until such time as a railway is possible. And if a railway should ever be reopened on any part of the future of this route, then incorporate a greenway alongside. We think that's a perfectly feasible option. There is little doubt the economic benefit this idea would bring to the west of Ireland. I call the economic boom from greenways going through rural areas as greenwaynomics. It's an amazing phenomenon which we all know about, in which rural areas discover new economic prosperity simply because of a greenway going through their village or town. Next slide, please. We're here today to ask our voices to be heard, in particular the counties Mayo and County Galway, and let me explain why this is. In 2012, myself and John Mulligan met with Deputy Alan Kelly, who was at the time a Minister in the Department of Transport, when none other than Leo Varadkar was the Minister of Transport. Minister Kelly told us, "You're pushing at an open door, lads." He agreed with our idea. However, he also told us we need to get the county councils on board, and that was the start of our journey. We needed to get the county councils to adopt the idea, and that meant we had to influence changes in the respective county plans. We are still on that journey. We were successful in Sligo, where we finally got the Sligo Greenway idea on the closed railway written into the county plan. Councillor Castley will tell us more about that. In Mayo, we needed to influence the council to adopt the idea of a greenway on the closed railway, in particular north of Charlestown to Claremorris, and this is a real sticking point. Over the past decade, we have met with inexplicable opposition to our idea from Mayo County Council. In 2013, Mayo County Council received about 400 submissions on the county plan asking for a greenway on this route, but not adopt the idea or even mention it in the county plan. Mayo County Council has been aware of the level of public support for this greenway on the route since 2013. 8 years later, fast forward to 2021, a new county plan was due to cover the period 22 to 28. This time, along with this petition, Mayo County Council received 1,000 submissions on the county plan asking for a greenway on the railway route. They accounted for over 80% of all submissions received on the county plan. However, of huge significance were submissions from the landowners Irish Rail and from the Department of Transport, which both supported the idea of a greenway running from Charlestown on the Sligo Mayo border, going down south to Claremorris. Next slide, please. We feel it is very important the committee understand that north of Claremorris there is virtually zero chance of a railway ever being reopened. Because of this known fact, there is simply no rational reason for Mayo County Council to oppose the idea to use the closed railway as a greenway on this part of the route. I have mentioned Irish Rail and the DOT made submissions to Mayo County Council. It's the only time in this presentation I'll actually refer to a slide up in front of you. Irish Rail said this: support for the development of a greenways in locations where railways does not have a short to medium term viable business case for reintroduction of services in terms of the Western Rail Corridor. This conditional support is subject to the section north of Claremorris. That was from the landowner, Irish Rail. The Department of Transport said this: we welcome the protection of the Western Rail Corridor as a transport corridor rather than solely as a railway line, and the consideration should be given at a future time for the construction of a greenway on or beside the alignment of the railway line. This would be particularly welcome from Claremorris to Charlestown. The response from Mayo County Council to 1,000 submissions from the general public and the two very clear submissions from the landowner and Department of Transport that would fund such a greenway were little short of astonishing. The county councillors, against the advice of the county manager and in opposition to the views of 1,000 public submissions and against the specific recommendation of both the landowner, Irish Rail and Department of Transport, took it upon themselves to specifically oppose these ideas and inserted an objective into the county plan which said, MT09 MCC County Plan, that the Western Rail Corridor is protected and preserved for the delivery of rail infrastructure to develop the region, and the corridor is completely removed from any feasibility study in relation to any proposed greenway. The objective in the county plan went out of its way to block the views of the 27,000 people who signed this petition, the 1,000 submissions on the county plan, and the views of both Irish Rail and the Department of Transport. And that is the main reason why we're here today. Can I have the next slide, please? At every twist and turn of this debate, Mayo County Council have gone out of their way to suppress even the consideration of what we are proposing, and in total opposition of the views of the Department of Transport and the landowner, Irish Rail. Mayo County Council built into the county plan a written objective that blocks even a feasibility study. It is almost dictatorial what they have done. That is a huge part of the reason why we're here today, the sheer intransigence of Mayo County Council on this matter. On the Galway section of the line, the council response has been an uphill struggle for this campaign. We do have support for our ideas on Galway County Council. We also have opposition, which is fair enough. But at least Galway Council didn't stifle democratic debates, and the railway route has been part of a feasibility study in Galway, which was published recently. So there is some movement in that area. There is also the issue of the All-Ireland Strategic Rail Review, which will be referred to later by my fellow petitioners here today. Next slide, please. I am now going to hand over to Councillor Marie Castley to explain what is happening in Sligo.
Brendan Yes, I'm very pleased to be able to inform the committee that Sligo County Council has listened to the public and heeded what people have been saying in Sligo. Brendan has outlined how the campaign has had to persuade the county councils to come on board. I am pleased to confirm that as far as Sligo is concerned, the council is firmly in favour of the Sligo Greenway, which will run on the closed railway line from Collooney southwards to the Sligo Mayo border at Balahi, Charlestown, until such time as a railway might be economically viable. This part of the route will be known as the Sligo Greenway. However, this is only part of the much bigger project that Sligo County Council is working on with the Department of Transport and Transport Infrastructure Ireland. Working with Leitrim and Cavan local authorities and Fermanagh and Omagh District Council, a cross-border project has been agreed to develop a greenway on the closed railway route from Enniskillen to Collooney and continue then on to Charlestown. This cross-border cooperation is part of the legacy of the Good Friday Agreement and has benefited from the Shared Ireland Fund. The Department of Transport, working with Transport Infrastructure Ireland, has already invested over €500,000 in taking the plans for this long-distance cross-border greenway through the first development stages. Sligo County Council is now working closely with these agencies to take the project to the next stages of planning and ultimately construction. The Sligo Greenway will be of huge significance to the region, benefiting tourism, and will be a fantastic local amenity for communities along the route. It's important for the committee to take note that as far as Sligo is concerned, the Sligo section of the Western Rail Trail Greenway will happen, and it's such a pity that the same cannot be said for Mayo. As a member of Sligo County Council, I have made representation to Mayo County Council to consider joining with Sligo to extend the Sligo Greenway down through Mayo as far as Claremorris and to allow East Mayo to benefit from the tourism boom this would bring to the region. If the Sligo Greenway could connect through Mayo to the Great Western Greenway, just imagine the benefits this would bring to the region. It would be simply a huge economic benefit for the region and would be a huge social benefit to the people in towns such as Charlestown, Swinford, Kelchamaw and Claremorris. I am keeping my comments short, but I ask the committee to bring our thoughts to all the departments concerned and ask that the people in Mayo and Galway are listened to. The idea of a greenway along this closed railway line is quite simply a no-brainer. And to conclude, George Ball, an American diplomat, said, "Nostalgia is a seductive liar. Like a talented seductress, nostalgia will rope you in and cause you to lose sight of reality. It will present you with a sugar-coated version of the past, sweet enough to dampen the present and colourful enough to cast a shadow on the future. My vision for our country is to have an all-Ireland, cross-border, cross-community necklace of greenways that will change Ireland's future so positively for many decades to come. We owe this to our future generations. This is not a dream, but a feasible and attainable goal. If we work together and harness the power of greenways to transform our Ireland into a model of sustainability, inclusivity and well-being." Thank you.
Thank you, Marie. And I'm going to ask Bernice Brennan, a resident of Kilchamaw, County Mayo, support for the East Mayo Greenway campaign, to give the East Mayo view on the matter.
It's Brendan Agasanka Hirlock. As Brendan said, my name is Bernice Brennan. I live in Kilchamaw, County Mayo. I work part-time as a teacher. I have 3 children, aged 15, 12 and 9. All of them go to school in Kilchamaw. I am here today for them and for the future generations. In East Mayo, we have looked at the success of greenways on closed railway lines throughout this country and seen the way they have changed communities, bringing economic and social development to rural areas. You may have heard of this book, No One Shouted Stop, by John Healy, first published in 1968. It is about the social and economic demise of the West of Ireland, among other things. John Healy was originally from Charlestown, County Mayo. In this book, he mentions the Black Triangle of East Mayo, an area that covers Charlestown, Swinford and Kelchmagh. Thankfully, things are not as dark in this area now as described in this book, but it is still an area crying out for an impetus to create jobs. A greenway will provide such an impetus, not only in creating jobs, but in revitalising the whole region, boosting local economies, improving the physical and mental health of our communities. The closed railway line running north of Claremorris to Charlestown and on to Sligo is simply not going to reopen anytime soon. We all know that. In every report on the Western Rail Corridor has said this. It is not even included in the National All-Ireland Rail Review as a target to reopen this section of the railway line. With this in mind, it is such a pity that Mayo County Council has not supported this project, as Sligo County Council have. We hope that they will ultimately change their mind. However, what needs to be said is that Mayo County Council has been inconsistent on this issue, as they supported the use of the closed railway line in Kilchmagh for the VeloRail facility for 6 kilometres. This effectively means that Mayo County Council have accepted the fact that the closed railway line north of Claremorris running through Kelchmagh should be available for leisure purposes. They have allowed this VeloRail project, but they are blocking a greenway. Whilst the VeloRail is an interesting idea, it is not a facility that local people use much. It involves renting carts, as you can see on the picture, which are pedalled along a short section of the closed railway line, which you have to pay for. A greenway would be free to use. When the VeloRail was under consideration for the planning process, there were over 200 submissions on the planning application asking for a greenway to be placed alongside the closed railway line being used for the VeloRail. Believe me, there is huge support in East Mayo Greenway for the East Mayo Greenway in the areas of Claremorris, Kelchmagh, Swinford and Charlestown on the closed railway route. It is not just about tourism for the area. It is about creating an amenity which the local people will use and will be part of the attraction for wanting to live and work in the area. Brendan mentioned the term Greenway mnemonics. Please think about where we are placed on the Greenway route that we want to see happening in Mayo. Imagine how a greenway from Sligo through Mayo and on to Athenry and Galway would bring visitors and tourists into the area, creating jobs for our young people. Imagine people arriving into Knock Airport in County Mayo, renting a bike and cycling along this route. In Kelchmagh, where I live, the disused railway line is very close to the primary school. Children would be able to walk, cycle, scooter, etc. to and from school, a practice which the government's own Safe Routes to School programme encourages. A new greenway would become part of our local infrastructure, linking the communities, an amenity which could provide a safe place for all members of our communities and visitors alike, accessible to all, our children, our grandparents, wheelchair users, cyclists, buggies, scooters, etc. We are so lucky to have, right on our doorstep, such a potentially life-enhancing space, but sadly, we are not allowed to access it. It is to the detriment of the people who live in the towns and townlands of Claremorris, Kelchmagh, Swinford and Charlestown, as well as those who are visiting our area, that this widely supported opportunity to truly revitalise our local communities is being denied to us without any consideration. In East Mayo, all we want to see is a wasted asset brought back to life, resurrected and reinvented. We know the East Mayo Greenway will have the power to change lives for the better in our area. We just need to be listened to and for the reality of our situation to be recognised.
Thank you very much, Bernice. Can we have the next slide, please? Actually, I think the bullet points are going to come up on the future slides, so we need to jump through those bullet points and then take the next slide, which will come up in a moment.
Just to be clear as well, That is not the Velo Rail in Kilchmark we're looking at there right now.
It's one.
It's one picture of something similar.
Yeah, that's, I just want to make
It's
that
one
clear.
in Belgium, actually.
Yes, yeah.
Possibly could have happened.
Because in Kelchmount we have the Velo Rail, but we don't have the Greenway
Cycle rail
alongside it.
Okay, that's the right slide. Thank you very much. Thank you, Bernice. You know that area, and we appreciate you coming along today. The next witness we have today, and we'll try and move things along as quickly as possible, is a former councillor from Galway County Council, Sean Cunniff, a Tuam resident who has been a committed supporter of this idea for a Greenway route along the closed railway from Athenry to Tuam and onwards to Mayo for many years. Sean, thanks for coming here across from Galway today. Now, can you give us the Galway view, please?
Brendan. Look, sincere thanks to you and your committee for having us here today. My name is Sean Cunniff. I was a serving councillor on Galway County Council until 2019 and was part of many debates and discussions about the complementary use of the closed railway alignment from Athenry to Claremorris as a Greenway initially. And should a business case ever recommend the reinstatement of a railway, then use this broad alignment for both. Bord Fáilte attended our Tuam municipal meetings and requested we develop this Greenway and detailed the success of the Great Western Greenway in Mayo, in which they had invested. Barry Kenny from Irish Rail explained that if ever a railway was to be reinstated, all the track, sleepers and foundations, which is the ballast, would all be replaced with modern rail infrastructure, and that there would be very heavy machinery involved. So if a Greenway was temporarily on the railway, it could simply be moved to one side of the alignment and fenced off. The campaign for the Galway section of the line to be given the Greenway treatment is known as the Quiet Man Greenway campaign, a name which comes from the famous 1950s film, which was shot on location using the station at Ballyglunan, known as Castletown in the movie, and it ranks as one of the most recognisable rail stations in America's cinematographic history. Next slide, please. Being from Tuam, I know there is an overwhelming support for the Greenway. The petition we are talking about today has over 9,000 signatures from people based in Galway. In September 2018, over 3,000 people marched in Tuam on a Sunday afternoon to apply pressure on Galway County Council to support the idea of a feasibility study on the Greenway. The feasibility study funded by Transport Infrastructure Ireland was finally published in November 2023. This study looked at the choices of routes that might be available for a Greenway from Athenry to Tuam and onto the county border with Mayo at Milltown. The detailed feasibility study concluded that the preferred option for a Greenway in terms of environmental impact, costs and deliverability was to use the closed railway alignment. We know it makes common sense to do this, so why won't it happen? The reason is that there is still a legacy cohort of opinion, contrary to all the conclusions of all independent reports, that consider a railway on this route is still possible. However, they are now prioritising rail freight as the established criteria for the reinstatement of a passenger service is simply absent. Demographic data details the extremely low and dispersed population along the route, the presence of a new motorway alongside this alignment, and excellent private bus services all negate any case for passenger services. Despite being able to supply our Greenway Group or local media with the name of any company in County Galway that requires freight, they are holding fast. Equally, they can offer no explanation as to why Galway City, with a mainline rail and the most numerous and powerful companies employing tens of thousands of staff, do not use or seek the use of rail freight. Nor can they name one IDA announcement in the last 10 years anywhere in Ireland that requires rail freight. In 2023, the new All-Ireland Strategic Rail Review was published, and despite the known facts of every independent report that has been published on the Western Rail Corridor, we were told that the railway was going to go ahead at some stage in the future between Athenry and Claremorris, apparently for freight only, but with no promises of when this might happen. Sadly, there is no promise of a railway happening in the near future and no promise of a Greenway happening. We know from the feasibility study that this is the best and only route for a Greenway to connect Mayo, so why wait? The argument to build the Greenway now, and if a railway is to happen, to put a railway with the Greenway alongside it in the future, has never been stronger. The 42-kilometre Great Western Greenway in Mayo generated a local economic benefit of €39 million in 2016. Creating over 910 permanent jobs, new permanent jobs, direct and indirect. This economic impact is eminently possible along the Quiet Man Greenway, which is the Tuam to Milltown section. Our political system in East Galway needs to explain why we are spurning such vital economic impetus when immigration of our young people is mushrooming. Surely for the sake of our children, survival of our communities, our schools, LGFA, GFA, GAA and all sporting clubs, we can come to a resolution. After all, politics is so often championed as the art of the possible, and our young people need this art now. Thank you very much, Ciara.
Thank you, Sean. We all know about the frustrations we have. I'm now going to hand over to John Mulligan, a long-time supporter of this campaign. I'll ask him to do a quick summary for the committee of where we might go from here, and then a couple of final words for myself. John.
Thank you, Brendan. Cathaoirleach, members of the committee, thanks for giving us the opportunity to bring our views to the table today. My name is John Mulligan. I'm a journalist, author and newspaper columnist in the region. And like Brendan and others, I have been a long-time campaigner for sustainable infrastructure in rural Ireland. Next slide, please. Having an interest in outdoor tourism, particularly walking tourism, I started to campaign in 2010 for a network of long walking and cycling trails in Ireland, similar to what is enjoyed as a matter of course by people in other countries. At that time, Ireland had around 70 kilometres of trails, while Germany had 70,000 kilometres of linked trails. Clearly, we were never going to persuade German tourists, the biggest customers in Europe for this product, to visit Ireland and spend a week cycling up and down the Mayo Greenway. As somebody said at the time, like a hamster in a wheel. We had some successes. Fáilte Ireland, initially opposed to such trails, conceded the merit in our case following market sampling in the main European markets. John Martin, then the CEO of Waterways Ireland, initially rejected a proposal to use towpaths on river and canal waterways, but following repeated lobbying from us, he saw the potential and became a real champion for such development. The Royal and Grand Canal Way trails gave Ireland an immediate bounce into the market, delivering 270 kilometres of ready-made access, all in public ownership. Alan Kelly, as Brendan mentioned earlier, was an early supporter of the logic of utilising linear corridors in state ownership to help develop areas in need of investment. Pascal Donoghue, on being appointed Transport Minister, met with me and immediately saw the potential benefit and initiated the Dublin-Galway Greenway on the Royal Canal and the closed Mullingar-Athlone Railway, with the intention of progressing it further towards Galway. The final section of this project is not yet complete, but we hope and believe it will happen. Brendan and I identified linear corridors of state-owned lands as an early win in advancing our mileage of trails, and we've seen how this strategy has worked in Waterford and Limerick, for instance. The Waterford Greenway, mostly utilising closed railway alignments, attracts more than 250,000 unique visitors annually, as well as providing a leisure and commuting route for thousands of local families. It brings jobs too. A former derelict railway cottage on the old line, a mile east of Dungarvan, is now the well-regarded railway kitchen and employs, when I last looked, 32 people. We tried for many years to persuade councillors in the west of Ireland to copy the success of these projects. A study carried out in Sligo found a payback on investment on a greenway, based on the closed line between Collooney and Balahi, could be as little as 5 years. Yet we have debated this issue for more than a decade, with strong opposition from councillors who believe that a train on this route is imminent. It isn't. Every official report over that decade has found no case for a railway. The figures on the Ennis-Athenry line are dismal, but lobbyists boost them by adding in commuter numbers on the Athenry or Galway route, part of the existing Dublin-Galway rail line, nothing to do with the Western Rail Corridor. Next slide, please. The experts, however, refute the feasibility of building a line north of Athenry at this time. Lobbyists have sought to build a freight line with no stations, but the most recent NWRA report on rail freight into Mayo showed the existing lines to be lightly used with no requirement for another line. The lack of ambition shown by councillors and indeed TDs in Mayo, seeking to build an unwanted railway to ship raw materials out of Mayo, is a third world approach to infrastructure provision. Round sawlog, which is what we're talking about, should not be shipped out of the west until it's processed into saw and timber, fuel or indeed modular houses. Seeking to build a railway to create wealth outside the west is a negative approach to local governance. In any case, the exports of high value nowadays are increasingly transmitted and not exported. In this digital age, harking back to being a raw materials source for an empire elsewhere is hardly forward thinking. Next slide, please. The fact remains that no railway has been built on this route between Athenry and Collooney in the last decade, and it's very likely that the situation will remain the same a decade hence. Given the short payback period and the crying need for local investment in neglected towns, logic dictates we should be building this infrastructure now. Apart from creating wealth now, making the region attractive to remote and high-paid workers, and providing safe places for families to exercise, a greenway will halt the creeping land grab that's happening along the route and that has happened with too many such assets elsewhere. Then if a decision is made to build a railway in 10 or 20 years, the asset will at least have been preserved. At a meeting of an Oireachtas Transport Policy Committee here in this building in February 21, Jim Mead, the CEO of Irish Rail, described greenways on closed and disused lines as a win-win, given they preserve the routes in public ownership, while the primary use of the asset will always be rail. It is important that this debate is not seen as a rail versus trail debate, but rather a debate on the best use of a state-owned asset at this point in time. Brendan has told you what Irish Rail told Mayo County Council about a greenway north of Claremorris and how they've deliberately stopped this from happening. Next slide, please. 27,000 people in the region are crying out for this infrastructure. They see the benefits enjoyed in places like Kilmacthomas and Waterford, and they wonder why their council, with the honourable exception of an enlightened Sligo, will not draw down the available money and just do it. Then in the future, if funding is made available for rail, we'll take that too, with the greenway relocated to the edge of the alignment as a minor percentage of the cost of the rail project. But the council needs to listen, and that's where we need your help. Thank you very much.
Thank you, John. I'll just be very quick with these concluding comments. And the next slide, please. Thank you, CAMCOR and committee members, for listening, and thank you to my fellow petitioners, including those in the gallery, for making the trip. In conclusion, all we are asking for is our message to be taken to the Oireachtas and the departments and to TII and those who will be involved in any decision-making on this. There is a wasted asset sitting idle. It's been sitting idle for the best part of 50-odd years. We know there are those who want to see the railways reopened, but we cannot wait another 50 years for what might happen. So this is our message. If the railway is going to be reopened from Athenry to Claremorris, then get on with it. At the same time, put in a parallel greenway. It's a perfectly safe and feasible option. If the railway from Athenry to Claremorris is going to be put on the permanent long finger and can kicking and won't happen at best for 10 or 20 years, then let's have a greenway now until such time as a railway is possible from Athenry to Tuam and onwards to Milltown and Claremorris. North of Claremorris, Mayo County Council needs to grasp the nettle, as Sligo County Council have done. The department should make it clear to Mayo County Council that Claremorris to Charlestown should be a greenway, with an accommodation made for a greenway parallel with the Velo Rail project for about 6 kilometres in Kiltimagh. Greenways on closed railways are not rocket science. They are a proven winning formula. I was walking on them when I was 8 years old in Derbyshire, and that's more years ago than I care to remember. The Western Rail Trail will bring a tourism economic boom from Collooney to Athenry and the region as a whole. Now let's just get on with it. Thank you for listening. We would welcome any questions you have.
Thanks to all our 5 speakers. Before I let in any of the other speakers, I suppose what has come up there is your side of the story. We will be following it up with like the Mayo County Council and bringing in other witnesses from the other side. If our own members, our usual members, don't mind, what we've usually done here is when a petition comes in from a particular region, we let senators and TDs from that area have the first say. So if some of our own members don't have anything, we'll let in. Okay. Frank.
Thank you, and you're very, very welcome. And indeed, it was very interesting to hear your commitment and your passion on an area that I feel that we have lacked in over the last number of years. As somebody went to Germany and Holland, and every time I'd cycle there during the summer or winter, I'd always say, God, why couldn't we have this in Ireland? And we can only have this because people like yourselves from various communities that have got up and go with an idea brings it to your local authorities, brings it to government, and I believe funding is there. And I just want to thank. A lot of work has been done over the years, but I think with the Green Party in government, I think there's a much more different approach. And I think local authorities have been, I suppose, not to the forefront of grasping this serious potential, tourism potential, even local potential, either of a greenway or a cycleway or a blueway. And I see it myself. I see we're talking about the Western Rail Trail, but the Sligo Greenway, but we want to extend it further down to Athenry, and I think it has my full support. I see the SLNCR Greenway, which Councillor Cassidy rightly raised as well. That'll bring us up to Enniskillen. But we need to join them all together. And you've the Ballinamore Greenway, my constituency, Carrick and Shannon to Battlebridge Blueway onto it from Shambo, and the Shannon Blueway up to Carrick, through Carrick and Shannon up to Rooski. And then you also have a blueway from Ballyshannon across the board as well. So they're all beginning to link in. But they can only link in if you have cooperation and you have people like yourselves who are prepared to roll up your sleeves. And you have my absolutely full support. I love, railways. My late father left Tubbercurry in the 1950s to go to London on that railway line, like many, many generations of his compatriots. And as I said, I would love to see the railway, and I support railways. But I think on this occasion, the Greenway is a no-brainer. It's the way forward. And I look forward to, I live in Sligo town, I look forward to getting on that Greenway, stopping off in Collooney, where my aunt had a tea shop, and stopping off in Collooney, where my uncles had the Mountain Inn, a pub, and going on to Tubbercurry. And this is what will happen. And it's not just tourism anymore. Is that when I was growing up, we were told we live in a temperate climate. We can actually cycle or walk nearly 365 days a year. And with electric bikes, and I'm at an age that we will be using electric bikes, I have no doubts that this is a way of travel as well, not just from a leisure point of view, but this is a safe way to get from, as I said, Collooney into Sligo, from Carrick and Shannon into Ballinamore, and once we link them up, I don't think people fully realise the potential that we can have. Again, it is my full support, but I did see, I was very involved in the Greenway between Loughy Forest Park and Boyle. And I remember 2012 when there was no money in this country going to government to get funding. And I was disappointed in local authorities on a few occasions spent the money on footpaths, where the money was especially for greenways. That greenway now is built between Boyle and Loughy Forest Park, and during COVID, like many other greenways, it was fully utilised. But now we need to bring that to link in Boyle to Sligo, Sligo to Mayo, to Galway, and further across the border. And there's a lot of others. So you can see, again, what's happening on the ground is the amount of people like yourselves that have a vision. They're prepared to stand up and have a vision. And I just want to thank Sligo County Council and the councillors in that area, to name a few. Councillor Cassidy, Councillor Mulvey, many others were involved in drawing up that, standing up and being counted. You have my absolute full support. I think the Greenway is the way forward, and it's the way forward for our country and for tourism, but for sustainable travel, but for people that can walk and cycle. And you wouldn't go on any road now on a bike or walk on a bike, and this is the way forward. And you can see all the work. But again, we want to join them up, but I want to applaud your tenacity, and I see John Mulligan there. John, you've had serious tenacity, and over the years you've brought your ideas, and you brought a lot of politicians on board, along with yourself, Brendan, and many, many more, and I applaud that. So well done, and I genuinely do think, and I look forward to the next submission from the railways, but I genuinely do think that both greenways and rail traffic can coexist and work together. So thank you.
Thanks, Deputy Mayor. Deputy Kenny?
Yeah, thank you
very much, Chair, and I'd like to thank you for your submission and your detailed account of all of that. And of course, you know, we all, I suppose, recognise that rail lines around the country have been used in a very positive way for greenways in many cases, and indeed, you know, along canals and other level, if you like, pathways is the secret to it, and that's what rail lines offer. I think, and I would be somewhat disagreeing with you that the rail line is never going to happen. I believe a railway is going to happen. I believe a railway can happen. I believe the political will is there to do it. It can be done, and I believe that when you build it, that people will use it, and that has been the experience everywhere when new rail lines have been opened. And I absolutely accept, you know, that we have to understand that the past has been a bad place in regard to leaving assets like the rail line lying idle, and that was very unfortunate that happened. It happened all over the place, and indeed there were many of the old rail lines that were left idle where people built sheds on them and done all sorts of things on them, and now they can't be used again. And that's, I think, a tragedy of the past that we certainly don't want to be repeating, and I don't think we're going to repeat that here. I support the idea of a greenway, but I don't support the idea of a greenway if it's going to block the prospect of having a railway. I think the railway line is there to be used as a rail line. I think that's what we need to be having our focus upon. And I would certainly support that we would put the greenway alongside the rail line, as you pointed out in some of the slides you had there. That's certainly an option that we should be looking at and should be using. But I do understand that, you know, the commitment and the passion that you have for what you're trying to do, and absolutely understand that. However, I do also understand that there is an equal passion and an equal need and a public need to restore our railways and to put them up and running again as they were in the past. And that's not harking back to some nostalgic past. It's actually looking at where the future is going. Everyone we talk to, when we talk about climate change, etc., they're talking about alternative means of transport. They're talking about public transport, and rail is going to be key to that, particularly light rail and electric rail. So I think, you know, we have a space here to do both. I think that's what we need to do and need to see happen. So in that context, I have no issue with the proposal to have a greenway, but I do have an issue if people believe that proposal for the greenway is in the context of the railway not happening. I think the railway will happen, and will happen quite quickly. And that's what I want to see happen. I want to see both happen. And I think the vast majority of us would share that ambition to see both happen. And it should not be an either or. And I think you said that in your submission. But putting the greenway on top of the existing rail line that's there, for many people, that would be a situation where it would be a block for getting the railway to happen. And we don't want that to happen. And I think it would be useful if you clarified that you absolutely are supportive of seeing the Western Rail Corridor open up as prospect.
Yeah. I'll let in Deputy Cannon, and then you can respond to the three if you...
Yeah, I'd like to get him before that.
Right, sorry. Well, we'll let you respond, and we'll bring yourself and Deputy Cannon.
Let Deputy Cannon go if you wish. No, I want to get back to the panel.
Deputy Cannon.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Thank you, Cormagan. Thanks to each and every one of you for joining us here today. And thanks to you for your patience, your perseverance, your absolute vision and ambition in relation to the development of the region you all represent. And stress that all of these people are here today purely on a voluntary basis. They've paid their own way to get here to Dublin, and they've been working for a very, very long time to deliver what they see is an absolutely logical use of a badly misused piece of national transport infrastructure. And I have huge respect for Deputy Kenny. I think he's a superb representative of his region. And I just want to clarify at the very beginning of my contribution, none of these people, nor indeed I, are setting out to block a rail line in any context or in any shape. We have been, from the very, very beginning of this campaign, absolutely clear on the fact that we want to see both happening. We absolutely, we are of the West of Ireland. We want to promote the development of the West of Ireland, the quality of life that people can have in living and working in the West of Ireland, and a rail service would add hugely to that. But our deepest concern, and it's a concern that is not going to go away anytime soon, is that in 10 years' time, we'll all be sitting in this room making the exact same case. I will be in the town of Athenry, a town that I was educated in. There's a particular little street in Athenry where you walk over a bridge looking down at a rotting rail line. That would be a horrific outcome for the people of Athenry, the people of East Galway, and the people of the West of Ireland. That's the first thing I want to say. So nobody here in any shape or form is setting out to block a rail line. what we are doing is making the case that any objective analysis that's been carried out in the last 10, 15 years by people who are expert in transport economics, Ernst & Young, Jaspers, the European Investment Bank, all of them have drawn the conclusion that right now it does not make economic sense to develop this section of rail from Athenry to Claremorris and on to Collooney. They have never said it won't make sense in the future. They've been very clear on that. But right now, there is no economic case to be made for the development of a rail service. And all we are saying is that in the interim, can we please have the vision and the ambition to bring this line back to life, to inject energy and vitality and a quality of life into towns and villages that are utterly bereft of that the whole way along that particular corridor. We are also deeply confused, Cathaoirleach, deeply confused about the messaging emanating from the Department of Transport. And I would ask that you and the administrative support that you have here at the end of our contribution today would seek to have officials from the Department, from Transport Infrastructure Ireland and from Irish Rail appear before this committee so we can end the confusion to the greatest possible extent. Because alongside the Department producing and commissioning and spending a lot of money on an All-Ireland Rail Review, which has drawn certain conclusions about one section of the line from Athenry to Claremorris, that same Department has been funding Galway County Council to the tune already of €375,000 to develop feasibility study and planning and design for a greenway along that very same line. So to be frank, I, as a representative of East Galway, I am not really certain as to what the Department's intention is here. And it has been that confusion and that lack of clarity in the Department's approach that gives me serious cause for concern. We also live in a democracy, Cathaoirleach. And I recall, and Sean mentioned that public outcry, is what it was in 2018, on a Sunday afternoon, assembling out in the car park of Tuam Cathedral. We all arrived there, those of us that were organising it earlier on the day, and we thought, you know, if we have 500 people turn up, fantastic. If we have 1,000 turning up, absolutely wonderful. This is the people speaking with great strength and great unity. 3,000 people turned up. It was unprecedented for any other, what you might call political cause that has, you know, emanated in East Galway the last 10, 15, 20 years. Nothing engendered that kind of support. 3,000 people marched through Tuam that day. School children made banners calling for the development of a greenway. Community groups, not alone from Tuam, but across the whole of East Galway. Sports clubs, those who have who prioritise the health and well-being of people in that region. They were on the streets of Tuam that day saying, this makes absolute sense for this to happen right now. And 27,000 people, think of that, 27,000 people along that whole corridor have said, this is what we want to happen for our children, for our future. It galls me to think that we are somehow dismissing all of that and dismissing the ambition of a region because we have polarised. We have, and Martin is right, you know, these two camps have emerged, and I cannot see the logic of allowing that to happen, where one camp says we're going to have a train or nothing, another camp says, in some people's eyes, we're going to have a greenway or nothing, which is inaccurate. The Greenway campaign has always said, let's have both. But my deepest fear, Cathaoirleach, now this is why I want to see the Department's officials in here, I want a timeline for the Western Rail Corridor to reopen from it. If it's going to happen, when is it going to happen? I want to know why the Department has invested nearly €400,000 in a feasibility study for a greenway that's now somehow lying in abeyance. I want a budget for the reopening of the Western Rail Corridor. Irish Rail itself published its national rail freight strategy last year to take us up to 2040. From now to 2040. Read it. There isn't one single line about the Western Rail Corridor. There is the development of a rail freight hub at Athenry station to take in freight by road on the M17, M18 and M6 into Athenry. Then, if the needs be, put it on the rail freight service to wherever it needs to go. And right now, there is a rail freight service from Mayo to all of our ports through Athlone for the one train a day. That's the number of freight trains leaving Mayo every day, one. Not 10, not 15, not 20, one. So let's be realistic here about using this line right now, not 10 years' time, not 15 years, to bring the greatest benefit to the region. It'd be deeply irresponsible of us as politicians, and the art of the possible, Sean, yes, that's what it needs to be about, to leave that line rotting, weeds growing up through it for the next 10 years. I do not want to be sitting here in 10 years' time and telling these people, well, you know something, we did our best. We really did, but what could we do? Hold up our hands in frustration. We cannot allow that to happen. So I'm asking you, Cathaoirleach, we need to get those officials in here right now as soon as possible, and we're really grateful to have this opportunity today to determine what exactly are their plans. Give us timeline, give us budget, give us something to cling on to, and a bit of hope. Thank you.
I should have made it clearer when I spoke about we bringing in Mayo, the intention is the department and Irish Rail as well, that we get the three different, as well as the presentation day, and we'll try and move that as quick as we can and get it in as soon as we can in the committee. Eugene, do you want to come in before we let the witnesses respond?
Here, look, August, around Gato, she's providing on Fort where Sean, Bernice, Marie, August, Brendan, Tafot, Rose, Collier, and Shocking you. One thing that was very important for me here today was to hear every one of you say you were not against a railway being developed if that was going to happen. That was very important, and that was made clear. And just to prove it to everybody, in your summing up, John, you said, if the railway is going to be reopened from Athenry to Claremorris, then get on with it, and at the same time put in a parallel greenway, it is perfectly feasible and safe option, which I agree with, by the way. And then you said if the railway is going on the permanent long finger and won't happen at best for 10 or 20 years, then let's have a greenway now until such a time as the railway is possible. And I think that's absolutely, totally in order. And the other thing that was really important to me here today was the honest way that every one of you presented your case today. That's important for members of this committee. And Cathaoirleach, I totally agree with you. We have to bring the officials in here from Mayo County Council, and I'm not going to say too much more today, except to say you should be listened to, and the points you made should be taken into account. But I want to go back very, very briefly to what Brendan said there, and you said that Mayo County Council disagreed with the CEO. I think I'm reading it correctly. And they actually put something into that county development plan which virtually blocked dealing with submissions and blocked that proposed development going ahead under the present county development plan. Am I correct in saying that? And that's obviously why you're here today. And I want to add another bit to that, because I think that you, Bernice, said that this part of that is a part of that railway line around Kilshima has been developed for another purpose. So I put the question to you. If the county development plan adopted what the councillors did there and that, and now development has taken place somewhere along that line, is it not in contravention of the county development plan?
I said that.
Yeah.
I said that in what I said.
Yeah, but I'm not,
like Mayo County councillors saying we're accepting that there is not going to be a train anytime soon, because it's a 12-year lease that they have on the section of the line. Okay, the Velarail only opened last summer. The official opening was in June last summer, right? There was delays with it for planning and with COVID and everything else, right? So the 12 years expires, is it 2027, Brendan?
Yeah. They actually got the licence from Irish Rail back in, I think it was back in the mid-teens, and it actually expires, yes, you're right, in 2027, I think it is. So they only got the thing up and running within 3 years of the end of their licence.
So this summer just gone by was when the Velarail project opened, okay? But there was delays and so on. So Mayo County Council got the funding for that, and so it's being used as a tourism attraction, right? But as I said, local people don't use it much, and it's only open. It's only a seasonal thing. It's not open all year round. It's only open in the summer. You know what I mean? So that's a leisure tourism, whatever. And I said, while it is an interesting idea, it's not something that locals use much, and it's not something that can be used all year round. You know what I mean? And people have to pay for it. So people like myself with children, or even people coming on holidays, they're looking for something that's free to do with your children. People are not really willing. They might try it out once, but they're not going to be using it every weekend. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. So, but you see, this project is there now. Yeah. The Velorail is there now. But they've actually blocked, while the Velorail is running in the summer, local people are not allowed to even go and walk along the railway line. You can't do it.
That's my point.
Where for years,
it's a contradiction
people
of
were
what
actually...
Finally, Chair, on that, I think definitely I would agree. A statement from the Department of the Minister on this could clarify an awful lot here. You know, so like you have my support in what you're trying to do, and I'm delighted to be here today to listen to you.
But I have spoken to our local representatives in Mayo, our county councillors, our TDs, and it's actually a waste of time. They're not listening to us.
Did all the councillors vote?
I have spoken to them on the phone about this, and they just kind of fob you off. You know what I mean? They make excuses and they fob you off. You know what I mean? Yeah. I'm sorry now, I know you said at the beginning, you know, obviously, I'm not naming any names, but our public representatives in Mayo, be it councillors or TDs, are not supporting us in relation to a greenway. And the Mayo section of it is only how many kilometres? 30-something kilometres, is it? It's not a lot.
32,
Mayo section of it. You know, 30-something kilometres.
Just to be aware, Mayo County Council have taught this committee before that the elected members expressed the view that the potential of the Western Rail Corridor needs to be protected, and that any greenway route to be accompanied on the ground other than on the railway line. And they've told us that that any progress on the Athenry Claremorris line could lead to increase. So what we're being told and what you're telling us is kind of conflicting, so we just need to be careful what accusations we're saying.
Yeah, I understand that. I understand that. And we have local elections coming up, and we're very hopeful, as I said, that they will start to support this.
Well, I will say one thing that we've always done in this committee is we've asked people to leave politics.
Right, I understand that. I understand that. I understand that.
These are community organisations that are coming here, and we feel that if we start bringing politics in around the table here, we'll get nowhere. So we just... Mr. Quinn.
Thank you. I think, and thank you, Senator Murphy, we have deep frustrations. I know we're not going to politics in it, but we have deep frustrations with Mayo County Council on this issue. It started back in 2013 when 400 submissions went into them. And we argued with them a lot about it, and they didn't even mention it in the county plan. We then, in between times, which I didn't mention in my spiel, we got 800 submissions into the North West Regional Authority plan, and they actually wrote into the North West Regional Authority plan that they agreed with this idea. So it's not for want of telling them. 1,000 submissions, but the most key thing was the fact that Irish Rail and the Department of Transport, they were actually quite clear about this. I know that Kieran, Deputy Cannon, has said that, you know, there's been ambivalence about where direction they're going to in Claremorris up to Athenry. But they were absolutely clear. They said, and I said it in speech, they actually name it, the route. North of Claremorris, nothing is going to happen. So, Deputy Kenny, you can say what you like about having the railway the whole way to Collooney. In your dreams, when you're pushing daisies up, I think, and I really do believe that. And in any event, there's so many nitty-gritty bits of detail here. Between Claremorris and Collooney, there are 365 railway crossings. The road twists and turns like a, I don't know, like a spaghetti baked and thrown down on the floor. It's not even feasible that a modern railway can be built on that route. Now, in terms of the closed railway, I know I've heard arguments that say, oh, we must keep the closed railway there, we must keep the railway actually in situ. The railway does not exist. It's scrap metal. It would need to be pulled up. The new railway line from Limerick down to Ennis, that was an old railway. It was pulled up, put to one side, and a new railway was put down. So that argument, when I hear that, is totally false. It was one that was used for the Velo rail. And the point that you've made, Senator Murphy, is absolutely true. I was astounded at Mayo County Council. It was actually at the final stages of submitting the county plan when the county manager, and I've got the document here, in his final recommendations to the members, he said to them, take out that clause that the Western Rail Corridor is protected and preserved for the delivery of rail infrastructure to develop a region and excluding the feasibility study of the WRC. He asked them to take it out. Irish Rail made a second submission asking them to take it out. And guess what happened? They left it in. And it built into the county plan another 8 years of doing sweet Fanny Adam.
Do you want to respond before I bring someone else in?
No, look, I mean, people has a view of that, that's fine. I'm sure people would have talked to Monsignor Horan when he started to build the airport and told him he'd never succeed. You know, we can, and you can laugh if you like, but at the end of the day, we have to have ambition to improve our country, and improving our rail network across the entire island is part of that. And this may well be part of it. I'm not saying it's going to be part of it. It may well be part of it. Certainly, I have an ambition to see that happen, and I have an ambition to see greenways happen as well. It's both. And I think to suggest that this is where the division comes in, Mr. Quinn, is when you say it's never going to happen, it makes people, it gives people the impression that you never want it to happen. No, and I think you need to be careful around that if you want to progress an argument which is going to validate your point of view.
That's fair enough. That's fair enough. But I think actually, if you look at the original report that looked at the Western Rail Corridor, didn't even look at north of Claremorris. The new strategy document, the All Ireland Rail Review, hasn't even looked at north of Claremorris. If we could at least get someone to say, I tell you what, north of Claremorris, have your greenway like Sligo County Council are aiming for. Because it is getting, it is, if I give the wrong impression then I apologise, but it is getting deeply frustrating. North of Claremorris is getting deeply frustrating. Because if they'll allow, excuse me 1 second, if they will allow a Velo rail on the route, why won't they allow a greenway on the route? They're both being used for leisure purposes. Could you explain that?
Yeah, well, look, to be fair, I suppose this is one of the reasons we're going to bring him in. The deputies here or the senators here aren't going to be able to answer that question for you, Mr. Quinn. And Leo just showed me TII, we'll ask them in as well. They have a report done on the railway. Ms. Castler and then Mr. Kniff.
Thank you. Just to clarify as well that when Minister Ryan was in Sligo there just before Christmas, and he visited Sligo County Council, and I actually chaired that meeting, and it came up, and I actually asked him about the Sligo Greenway and the continuation of the line, and he categorically stated, and it's on record, that for the foreseeable future there are no plans to develop a railway line north of Claremorris to Sligo. And that's on the record, and the Minister has said that.
And he's also said it in earlier.
So that's, I don't know what else, he's the Minister for Transport, and as Deputy Cannon has said, all the reports have stated that, when people are contracted to question people and to make submissions, and all these reports are valid. So how much more validation, how many reports do we need before politicians start to take this seriously? And actually, I'm almost embarrassed as a politician when we have mums and dads, and I've been contacted by people in Mayo asking why they don't understand and they don't want to know anything about this report and that report. All they want is something for their children. They want to keep their children here, and they want to have an option for their children to return. That's all they're asking for. They hear politicians answering, they lose complete faith in the whole lot of us when this kind of arguing is going on and stalling. And as Brendan said, one or the other. I'm not going to be back here in 10 or 20 years listening to this. None of us are. There'll be somebody else, and we'll still, as Deputy Cannon said, we'll be holding up our hands saying, we couldn't do anything about it. There has to be a will. What we have to do as politicians, we're employed. We are the servants of the people who elect us. It's not the other way around. The people are asking for this. 27,000. You're just talking about 27,000 who have signed a petition. There's another 50, 60,000. It's not quantifiable, the amount of people who want this. And why aren't they allowed to have their say? Why aren't they allowed to have this small piece of infrastructure that will change an entire region, not a little town? And they're the towns that have been decimated over the decades. And Deputy Kenny is talking about, that it is coming. Have at least, okay, in another 5 years, if there's a report to say, yes, there's going to be a train on that line in the next 5 years, people will be happy with that. But our chair of Sligo Greenway said that he was a child, and he's in his late 50s now, and he was a child when the last train left Tubbercurry. So, you know, are our grandchildren going to be sitting wondering what's happening? And we have a duty to look after the next generation.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Just before I let you in, Sean, we understand your frustration, but you also know as a politician that coming today and putting your case without the other side isn't going to get answers here today.
But we have the other side. We have the facts.
We have suggested, well, we haven't heard them.
Okay.
We've asked and we've suggested that we bring in Mayo County Council, Department of Transport, TII, Irish Rail. But we know, and you know as a politician also, that things move slowly.
Yeah.
We all want to bring up a problem today and a result tomorrow morning, but it doesn't happen. And I asked the public in your area to give us a chance to go through it the way it should be. And we will move it on as quick as we can here in this committee. That's all we can promise yourselves.
I appreciate
and the people you represent.
But the reports are all there. The talking and surveys and questions, that's all done. The information is there already. There's no need to talk any more about it. Irish Rail have given their answers. The reports have shown all the information. The reports have shown the results. Thank you.
Thank you, Carol. Look, I'm so encouraged, you know, at all the questions and the positivity. And Deputy Kenny is right. That is a hugely important thing. It's as solid as the tracks themselves or whatever. This perception that if we show any inclination that we're just Greenway people, like we're all for the railway, we're all West of Ireland people, but but we're at this since 2012. There's a report so rock solid saying it's open countryside, there's small villages, there's no population. There's a motorway running alongside it, the best form of road possible. There's unbelievable private bus services. So I think the information is there, but I do think that the way our vocabulary, I think it's a very good tip, that we have to get the vocabulary right, that when we're presenting our case, that we don't alienate, because it's just like it's the default position that people say, I'd love a railway, it'd be great to go on a railway. So it's a big job to explain that there will be a Greenway, say, in the interim, but not in any way threatening a railway. And that's our position always, the complementary use of the alignment. But, sorry, the final thing I'd say is, but the realest thing is, and I tell you this now, and you know, I'm from Tuam, and I'm the secretary of a ladies' football club the last 7 years. And every year when we're doing the fixtures, I can see, oh, this club isn't in the division this year. They don't have the numbers. They've amalgamated. Oh, these aren't here at all. Every year, the clubs are going. They're amalgamating. They're so long the names now, it's hard to, you know, and it's real. The post offices are gone. You know, the ATMs are gone. The guards are gone. We're trying to put stuff back into, it's a plea from us here, we're trying to put stuff for our kids back into, all my nieces and nephews are gone. It's real, emigration is real and big in the west of Ireland. And this thing about, you know, we've got to do something now, and I'm so happy that you're all here and that you're so engaged and you're so respectful to the process, and I see a process in front of us that I'm very, very happy with. So I just want to tell you, it's so heartfelt. I've my own nephew gone to Canada, restaurant, it's so hard to do business in Ireland, he's gone. And it delivers one thing into an area, footfall, the golden ingredient that you can't get, you can't buy it. It's coming. They want to come. They want to come in thousands and thousands, and we're saying, will we accept you? It doesn't. You know, we've got to for our kids. We've got to go with it, and we have to make it happen. And I really believe we can. I really believe we can. And thank you very much, Karen.
Before I bring you in, Deputy Harkins.
Very, very brief. Because to be honest with, and thank you for letting me in, Chair, and apologies for arriving late. I can't better what has been said. You've stated it very clearly, and I think your presentations have been reasonable. It's not an either or. It's what can we do now that will make a difference, that doesn't preclude what could happen in the future. I mean, to me, that is a very reasonable way of doing it, because in truth, we don't know who the Minister for Transport will be in the future, and we don't know what decisions will be taken. So what we're discussing here today doesn't stop anything from happening in the future. In fact, and you can correct me if I'm wrong on this, it might help, because if the Greenway was preserved, whatever, it might be in a better place if it was to be upgraded. So I hear what you say, Chair. Nothing can be done tomorrow, but this is a long, long, long time in gestation. And some of the people over here, I've had my debates and discussions with them, and I did change my mind when I could see the reality of what they were saying. And as you said, the footfall, the importance, I'm only thinking really of Sligo, but Mayo's the same, of that Greenway, the difference it would make to so many small towns along the route. And I'll finish with this. You know, when you're looking at the various magazines talking about what to see in Ireland, what to visit, one of the top attractions is always the Waterford Greenway. And I know why. And I see that we could have the same in the Northwest. And that whatever camps people are in, that we just say, look, let's be practical. Let's think of now. Let's think of people now and in the next 10 and 15 years. We won't do anything to stop further decisions or ambition, as Deputy Kenny said, but we need to work now. So that's...
One very quick thing. You mentioned Knock Airport. One of the best things that ever happened. Where I live, it's 15-20 minutes drive to Knock Airport. But I live in a town, as Sean said, the 2 banks are gone in the last few years. The town is going down. And this asset is there, and people go over to Westport. People bring their bikes, put them on the things on the backs of their cars, and they go over to Westport and they say, this is fantastic. Why can't we have that in East Mayo? That's West Mayo. So they just want a bite of the cherry. We want what everyone else has.
Deputy Buckley and then Deputy Senator Lombard.
Thank you, Chair, and thanks very much, Ken, for coming in today. I sat back, I love sitting back and listening to all the arguments and stuff here. I have to say your cases, I mean, they're no-brainers. We've had the same thing. I'm East Cork, so from Middleton to Cork City. It took us 15 years of lobbying to even get the train back there. It's one of the busiest lines now. From Middleton to Youghal, the Greenway is almost ready to open. And I agree with all the speakers, including Deputy Kinney. The language at the time was, of course, everybody wanted the railway back. But being a realist, and I marked it here for Bernice, when you were talking, the closed railway line running north to Claremorris to Charlestown to Sligo is simply not going to reopen anytime soon. And I put out, yeah, a realist. And you're right, and I agree with it, because we had 600 people in Youghal at a meeting that night. And I said, lads, here's the reality. It took us so many years to get it back into Middleton. It took over 20 million in development charges to actually get that railway line back in. I said, the lack of industry at the moment in Youghal, nothing is going to pay for it to go back in. But the possibility of the Greenway will boost your tourism. You had the Ironman for 4 or 5 years at the time. The footfall that comes with that, we've already had 4 shops and 2 restaurants opened, and the Greenway hasn't even opened yet. I said, it's on a lease, right? It's on a lease. So the possibility of, putting the line down is possible. And it is mentioned, funny enough, I wrote to the TII and the NTA probably 6 times in the last 3 years to get a park and ride from Youghal to the train station in Middleton for connectivity. In the meantime, no, we're not doing it. But I said, you're not opening the railway. And then the strategy report comes out, and the park and ride, I think, is mentioned 4 times, and the railway link back to Youghal to Waterford is mentioned 6 times. But that's a long, 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 long way away. So I said, lads, be a realist, make use of what you had. I'm well used to the one below in Waterford that was mentioned here. It's absolutely flying. And it is the other benefits of it. And people will say to you as well, they'll argue the point, it's a waste of money. It's cost neutral to put the line back down. So, and as the chair said, I mean, you make an absolutely amazing case here. You can't argue with it. You presented the facts, right? But there's a line in our job, and it's sometimes you have to listen to 2 sides of the story, and somewhere in the middle is the truth. And I would be siding with the chair and saying, yeah, let's bring in the county councils. Let's bring in who else is there, Irish Rail, TII, the whole lot. And be patient, because I'm here 7 years and we've other petitions to go through after this today. And in the 7 years, it's the first time I've ever seen somebody get a result out of any committee, but actually to write back and thank you for it. And we do not play party politics in this, because this is the last chance.com for anybody, any single citizen. And we're all citizens of the state. We might be elected reps, but we're still citizens of the state. And I know where you're coming from with the kids and positive mental health and that benefit of it. We have the best country in the world. We have the best people in the world. COVID has shown us what kind of scenery we have in our own country, because people didn't even realise what was at their own back door. And as I said, we'll work collectively here to get the answers, number one. I mean, let's get the facts and the answers and say, right, if this is the answer from what you need, I suppose we'll concentrate on Mayo. I'm not picking on any county council, but Mayo seems to be the stumbling block here at the moment. Right. Why did you put that into the county plan, the development plan? Why can't that be amended? Because I've worked on county development plans and they can be amended and can be changed. But let's have it out, and let's bring those in here as well. And hopefully, in a short period of time, that we'll all go away collectively with an answer that we're all happy with. And at least an answer there where you can say, right, that's the final stop. We know where we're going or where we're not going. But as I said, I'm looking at that, and it's, as you said, make the best of what you have now in the short term and plan for the long term later on, you know what I mean? So thank you, Chair. Well done.
Senator Lambert, sorry.
Thank you, Chair. I'll be very brief. Look, you make a very, very compelling case. It's just trying to work out how do you get movement on this issue is probably the big issue. It's all to do with an objective within the County Development Plan of Mayo, objective MT09. That's to be changed. Number one, I'm just a little bit concerned on a few things. This is a new county development plan that's been passed with a certain lifespan. Did the planning regulator ever intervene regarding the county development plan? Did the planning regulator ever make any commentary regarding this issue? When it came to the county development plan to be approved by the department and the minister itself, which county development plans are sent to the minister and then could come back with a comment regarding a certain paragraph is inappropriate, did the minister of the day ever inform Mayo County Council of any issues regarding the county development plan? And if so, what would the issues be? And the third issue is, and I think Deputy Buckley touched on it, to get a contravention of the county development plan needs the full support of the management of the local authority before it goes to the executive, to the members, and then the members vote on it. The management of the local authority were in favour originally of changing the actual development plan. Have they indicated at any level that they are willing to move forward with a contravention of the county development plan? Thank you, Chair.
I actually don't know the answer to that question. All I can tell you is that at the time the county development plan was being discussed, and when it came to the final draft of the county development plan, and when the Chief Executive of Mayo County Council went back to the Chamber and said these are the changes I think we should make, one of which was to exclude that controversial MT09, they refused to change it. And also the department made in the second phase, the final phase of submissions on, when they've approved the plan, then it goes back for the final phase of submissions, that the department put a submission in saying, please take that clause out effectively. And they made a point of not taking it out.
But regarding the planning regulator?
I don't know the answer to that question.
And regarding the department?
The department made submissions on...
The department have the power at the end of the day to...
Yeah, I am aware of that, but I don't know whether they did.
And have you any negotiations yet with the county manager, the executive of the local authority, regarding a potential change to the county development plan that only can be proposed by him?
That we haven't had any discussions with him about it as yet, no.
Okay, thanks, Chair.
Thank you.
Any members wish to come back in?
Deputy Cannon. One final point, and just thanks again, as Deputy Buckley has said, for an incredibly compelling presentation. Anybody who thinks logically and rationally can only agree with the case being made by these people today. I'll make one final point. Every country is obliged to plan for its future. Every country is obliged to plan for its future based on the resources it has to deliver on that future. I live in a tiny little East Galway village. 200 people live there. I'd love a train station outside my door. I know that will never happen. There are many similar towns and villages across this country that will never have that resource made available to them. And every country has to prioritise its infrastructural development based on need and resources. And in Ireland, we do that through our National Development Plan. Right now, because of the massive inflation in construction costs, our current National Development Plan has a €9 billion hole in it. We can't even deliver what we're setting out to deliver by 2040, and there's going to have to be a revision and a re-examination of that. And in that context, there'll be a section allocated to transport. And if you look at nationally now where the pressures lie in terms of national transport infrastructure development, they lie primarily where the most people live. That's how you manage a country. And right now, there are more people commuting to Galway City every day from the towns of Oranmore and Athenry, just add up those two towns, than there are from the whole of County Mayo. That's where the investment in rail is needed right now in the west of Ireland. It's in double tracking the Dublin-Galway line, particularly double tracking that line, I would argue, from Ballinasloe all the way into Galway city centre, in significantly developing park and ride facilities in Ballinasloe, Woodlawn, at time in Athenry, Oranmore, all the way into the city again. That's where we need to make huge additional rail investment in the next 10, 15, 20 years. So in establishing what those priorities are, we have to be realistic and we have to be pragmatic and we have to plan in the best possible manner. In my estimation, and I've read extensively every single report that has been done by people that are far more expert than any of us in this room here, transport economists, who report in a purely objective and rational manner. And their conclusion over and over again is we will not see rail services reinstated on that line for the next 20 to 30 years. That's the reality. So as Deputy Harkin says, let's act now. Let's act for the benefit of these communities right now. We could have a Greenway live from Athenry all the way to Collooney in 5 years' time. Done and dusted. And then when the rail comes, it's been done internationally all over the world. Pick it up, move the Greenway to one side and put in your rail line. And by the way, the case that Brendan makes, there are 65 level crossings between Claremorris and Collooney. It is highly likely that if we are ever to develop a rail service north of Claremorris, it won't even be on that line. It'll be on a completely different line that will be CPO'd like we do with most other national transport infrastructure. Thank you.
Yeah. No, look at it. We totally understand your frustration, but for this committee to do its job properly, we need to tease out where the sticking points are with the other Mayo County Council, Irish Rail, Department. And the Department, as Deputy Gannon said earlier, they need serious questions to answer, that they're, on one hand, supplying money forward, and on the other, putting stumbling blocks in the way.
In front of it, yeah.
The assurance we'll give all of you is that we will follow it up as quick as we possibly can and get them sitting on the same seats as the chair sitting on today, that other members can come back in and quiz them on why, on your behalf, that these stumbling blocks are there. I'd ask if you want to make one quick final statement before you leave.
Well, just thank you very much for hearing our views. I know sometimes I get a little bit kind of emotional about it because I've been involved in it for so long.
You're not don't be worried about that.
But like I said in my closing comments, it's like I said in my closing comments, you know, we are pretty sure about north of Claremorris. I don't want to stop a railway line north of Claremorris, but we are pretty sure about north of Claremorris. It's done and dusted. No one's even considering it. The Claremorris Athenry thing kind of popped back up on the agenda when it was popped into the All-Ireland Rail Review. As I said, look, that's, if you're going to do it, get on with it and put the railway in, the Greenway in alongside. That really would be a win-win. And then in terms of the win-win, listen to what the slide I put up with one verbatim quote from Jim Mead. He said, you know, we'll only allow Greenway on a very strict licence arrangement. They have nothing to be frightened of. They have nothing to be frightened of. We're not trying to steal their railway. They have nothing to be frightened of. Put a greenway down there. The bandwidth of the entire route is about 30 metres. There's some pinch points that engineering could solve, you know, and it would just do so much for these communities. It really would. I mean, you know. And that's all I say is thank you very much for having us.
Okay. Oh, yeah.
Just one final thing, Caroline. Thank you.
Right.
Oh, sorry, Maria. It's just this term about a transportation system for the rural Ireland versus a train system. I mean, we would all small buses picking up people and moving around in rural Ireland. That's what we need. A heavy rail and track through small towns and villages. You know, we know it won't. We know it. It'll certainly be overkill. But the demographics, the people aren't there to use it. So I think what the Department of Transport should be doing is focusing on bus services to look after rural Ireland, invest in that.
Well, I would suggest that through your supporters like Kieran and that, the other questions that when the department and them are sitting there, like Kieran and Marion and others can put to them that we can try and get answers. I'm not bringing you back in now.
John Mulligan come in, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
sorry.
Well, I got up to the table.
I'll be very, very brief. But a couple of years ago, myself and my children went to Waterford to cycle the Greenway. I had to go to the third bike hire shop in the morning early because the other two bike hire shops had no bikes. And I met more people from Sligo cycling the Greenway in Waterford than anyone else. And they were in the shops, they were in the hotels, they were in the B&Bs. So can you imagine if we had people from Waterford and from all over the country coming to Sligo to cycle the Sligo Greenway, all the way eventually from Enniskillen to Claremorris?
Well, I have no doubt with the meeting being public, there's people from Mayo County Council and that listening to your presentation, lads, and like has been said, you put a very good presentation in front of the committee today, and that's all we can ask, and we'll follow it up as much as we can for you. Ms. Brennan, do you wish to say anything?
Just say thanks very much. Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity to be here.
Just briefly to knock, unfortunately Martin, Deputy Kenny had to leave, but I just want to bust a myth about this rail versus trail. We have never, from the beginning of dealing with it, we've never said we're against a railway. Never. And we always qualify what we say by saying we're not opposed to a railway, but let's see a plan for a railway before we say we're in favour of it. And what Martin mentioned was that if a greenway goes on the railway, he's wrong with respect to him. But there is no railway on this. What is there, and Irish Rail have told us, is scrap metal, scrap timber, scrap stone. That has to come up anyway. Nobody's putting a greenway on anyone's railway. We're putting a greenway on some unused land under licence, or not us, the councils are, under a very strict licence. And again, we clarified this back in 2011, I think, with Irish Rail, that the licence states at the outset the primary use of the asset is for rail. Yeah. That's written into it, and there's nobody. And you know, Martin said, and I have great respect for Martin. He's a man with principles. He said that we should be qualifying what we say. But I would say that the people who are pro-rail should be saying we're not against a greenway, you know. Yeah, yeah. This is a two-way street.
To be fair to Martin, I think that's the message he was trying to get out, is that both sides of the argument need to be qualifying.
I'll say to Martin when I see him.
It isn't one against the other, because if we start pitting one against the other, we will be back here in 5 to 10 years' time again, because people will dig in their heels and back into a corner.
But we're not against a railway. We never have been against a railway. No. But we're realists.
Yeah. Right, look, I want to thank Mr. Quinn, Ms. Castley, Ms. Brennan, Mr. Kniff, Mr. Mulligan, and for making the presentation today. It was very beneficial. And like we have said, we will get in the other witnesses as quick as we possibly can, that we can let them put their case like you have, and we can make a recommendation, or we can put something to the minister at that stage. And that's the only promise we'll make. Okay. Right. This meeting stands suspended for 5 minutes. We let the witnesses out of the room. Here's a postcard for Mayo.